Welcome back, friends, to another video. This week we're talking about the banking collapse in Afghanistan. Now, no one knows exactly what is going on right now, but what I've tried to do is gather all the information from various news sources and put it into one video. Whenever there is an economic crisis going on in the world that is this dramatic, I think it's important to figure out what happened and gain a better understanding of the situation. On August 15th, the Taliban took control of Afghanistan. On August 31st, 2 weeks later, the last U.S. troops were removed from Afghanistan. This was an overthrow of the government by force, and it is not recognized by the international community. We see this because on August 16th, the day after the Taliban took control, the International Monetary Fund suspended all funding to the country. On August 17th, the next day, the European Union and Germany announced that they would cut off all development funding. Then on August 25th, the World Bank suspended all funding to the country. Many fear that Afghanistan is on the brink of economic collapse. 75% of the Afghanistan civilian budget and defense budget was paid for by the United States and others. With the U.S. leaving, many of the paychecks for those jobs in Afghanistan disappear overnight. So the first problem is the Afghanistan economy shrinks almost overnight, but the problem is far worse. Over the last 20 years, the U.S. has set up a democracy in Afghanistan patterned after the United States. But that is not all they did. The U.S. also set up a banking system that was based on the U.S. dollar. The U.S. set up an Afghan central bank and funded it by around $9 billion. But the reserve currency is kept mostly in the United States. So when the Taliban took over, the U.S. just cut off all access to the reserve funds. Afghanistan suddenly finds themselves without any cash. The Afghan people are scared, and this caused a run on the banks. This is when everyone rushes to the banks to withdraw their money at the same time. The banks did not have enough money, and so all the banks shut their doors on August 15th and stayed closed for 2 weeks. On August 29th, the new Taliban government ordered banks to open their doors again, but they only allowed people to withdraw $200 per week. Now, as you can imagine, it's impossible to run a business or pay employees on $200 per week. But even at $200 per week, the Taliban is still going to run out of money, which would mean all the banks would fail. It is important to remember that 20 years ago, there were almost no banks in Afghanistan. It was a primarily cash and barter economy. A large part of that economy was generated by the Taliban growing illegal drugs. The new Taliban government has claimed that they are no longer participating in the drug trade. But without the drugs, where is the money going to come from? By setting up banks, the U.S. allowed access to things like debt and savings accounts. Now, too much debt can be a bad thing, but the right amount of debt will grow an economy. The Taliban must decide if they're going to return back to the old ways of doing things and return to a cash economy, or whether they want to continue to enjoy the benefits of a modern banking economy. It remains uncertain which direction the country is going to go. The Taliban follow a strict form of Sharia law. They enforce this law by using violence against their own people. The Taliban were in power 20 years ago. That's a short enough time where people remember what it was like. Girls are not allowed to go to school, and women are not allowed to work. If a woman went out in public, they would be required to wear a burqa and be accompanied by a male relative. If women broke the rules, they would be whipped and executed. Another harsh rule is that all television and music is banned. The Taliban has already executed one musician and destroyed several stores selling art in the capital city of Kabul. The return of Sharia law also poses logistical problems for the banks. 20% of the bank staff were women. And these women are not returning to work because they are afraid to leave their homes. So the banks are dealing with the cash crisis while missing 20% of their staff. All of this has created the practical problem that right now in Afghanistan, people have no money. This is a population where nearly half of the households already lived in poverty. The cost for food has skyrocketed. So imagine yourself in this situation. You just lost your job. There are no other jobs where you can go work. If you had money in the bank, you cannot get it out. How are you going to feed your family? What's been happening is people have been trying to sell anything that they own. They bring their cooking utensils, anything out to the sidewalk and try to sell their wares in order to get money to eat. If you live in the United States, you have never lived through a banking crisis. You do not know what it is like to have a run on the bank. You do not have to live through the fear of waking up one morning and not being able to withdraw the funds in your own bank account. So if you are watching this YouTube video from your comfortable living room in the United States, I hope you realize how lucky you are. I see so many people complain about the US and criticize the Federal Reserve. People say we should throw away the US dollar and replace it with Bitcoin. You need to realize how important a stable dollar is. And you are so lucky to have people in the US government working every day to make sure you have a stable dollar and a stable banking system. You also need to realize that not everyone in the world has that privilege, and it can be taken away so fast. I hope this video gives you some perspective on what is happening in Afghanistan, but also the importance of a stable banking system. Because what is happening right now in Afghanistan is what it looks like when your banking system is taken away. This is a difficult crisis, and one can only hope for the best outcome for the Afghan people. This is Zach from Wolves in Finance. Thank you so much for watching.